Hey everyone, so I've been getting really into travel. I've been learning about it through blogs online, through videos of people who have traveled the world, through books about travel, and I've even picked up a few books I want to share with you and tell you about some of the things I've learned about travel and why I'm very excited about this. Here are some of the ones that have really excited me. These are myths debunked about travel. And it reminds me of the day I learned that you didn't have to be super good looking to get a girl. And I was told that, and it gave me hope. And that really excited me. And it spurred me onto this whole world of dating where I learned a lot of other similar myths debunked that's really have inspired me in a way. So I'm still working on dating. That's another subject for another day. Today we're going to be talking about travel. And let's start off with the major myths that these travel bloggers debunk. The first one is that travel is expensive and you have to be rich to vacation or travel. This is probably the number one myth that they constantly have to debunk. And I was talking to some people the other day who don't read travel blogs or any of this stuff, and it was the toughest time even even listening to them because they wouldn't even give me a chance. I didn't even get a chance to tell them that I had been reading these travel blogs and all this other information, and they were just like, oh, you have to be rich, you have to be a millionaire, and then once you have that money and you can afford to travel and just do nothing and not work, that's the only way you can go on vacation to these exotic places. And it's so tough. And that's probably the biggest myth that all these books really address. And I mean, I'm sure if you go to any travel blog, that's what they'll tell you. You do not have to be rich to travel. And there's more, obviously there's more detail to the subject as to how you do this. But the basic idea is that, if you travel, if you're just more resourceful, if you're smarter with your money and you compromise a bit, you can have just as much, if not a even better experience without all that money you're spending. For instance, food. People think that you have to go to five-star restaurants when you visit Paris. Is that true? No. The local people in Paris are eating food that they bought at the local supermarket and cooked themselves. So what are you doing constantly going to restaurants every night? And on and on and on. And one of the big things that I argued with these people that they had stuck in their mind was that, it's a worse vacation if you have to compromise and you're not eating this food, or you have to share accommodations or go to a hostel or whatever else. And that's not always the case. And the second myth is probably that you need to protect yourself, and the world is a very dangerous place, and travel is a very dangerous thing. And one of the themes that a lot of them say is that the world is not as dangerous as you think. News and media and news corporations, they highlight the most devastating things, the most catastrophic things that are occurring in the world. And the world is not as mean or cruel a place as you might think. And it's safer than you think to go travel. So those are the two myths that they supposedly debunk. And there's more, but those are the two big ones. And I want to talk to you about them because I would say, take them with a bit of a grain of salt, because you can't be too extreme with this. And luckily, I've been reading other material from different sources, and I've also just, learned a lot from people, experiences, and I know it's a bit misguided to think that that everyone in the world is nice and won't do you any harm. Like it or not, there are people out there who will steal from you given a chance. There are certain countries in Central America, certain areas in those countries, certain cities that are dangerous. You don't want to go anywhere alone late at night in those areas. On and on and on. So again, that's just how it is. even in China, there's a bunch of scam artist type things going on. Some somewhat elaborate scam artist things too, where they actually, um, if you're a guy, they will get attractive girls and bring you to a bar and then make it seem like uh, you're getting free drinks when in reality they're charging you at the end of the night for all those drinks, and then they'll charge you like 50 times what the drink's worth, and then you end up paying $10,000. So that type of stuff. So again, I would say take some of that stuff with a grain of salt. But at the same time, if you're on the extreme end where you're just scared to death of everything, that may be too extreme as well. So it really does make me think, because again, at the end of the day, it is true that there are some deranged, weird, creepy people out there, and they're here locally, they're here in a different country. So when you're meeting strangers you don't know, and that's a bit of a scary thing. Anyhow, let's start with the first book I want to talk about, Vagabonding. This is apparently like one of the most well-known books on travel. It's highly recommended by some of the top travel bloggers, some entrepreneurs, some life hackers, that's what they like to call themselves, including Tim Ferriss, who wrote The 4-Hour Workweek, The 4-Hour Body, and The 4-Hour Chef. He's a best-selling New York Times author. He recommends this book immensely. He says this is like the Bible to travel. I have briefly looked over it. I haven't read the whole thing. And it's written in a more poetic type way. And the purpose of the book, based off the introduction and the summary, is more so to twofold: to get people who travel a lot to really enjoy it and squeeze the juice out of it. For those who do travel and are not getting much enjoyment out of it and not really much satisfaction or fulfillment. And then the second goal of this book is to really get people who are at the point of just like completely uninformed about travel, which is most of you guys, and don't know what to do and scared to death and have no information about it, to on the road and so forth. So that's basically what this book is about. And again, this is exciting to me because I've been watching a lot of videos on YouTube, and reading articles about travel and talking to people about it, and it's exciting. There's apparently a lot of YouTube channels who they're dedicated to travel. Like, that's the point of their channel. They travel and they share their experiences and their footage of them traveling the world, and they give advice on this. So it's interesting seeing these people talk about it and discuss this and show footage of it. And there's even TED Talks and speeches from people who travel the world, which gets me to my next point, which is interesting. There's this one man, he did this TED Talk, and it's titled something like How I Traveled the World for Free for the Last 5 years, or something like that. Again, there's a little bit of clickbait in that title. Does he really explain how to travel for free after that 30-minute presentation? Yes and no. He has to work, and he's usually working odd jobs. And to summarize it in like 2 sentences, he hitchhikes, he sleeps in tents, he's clean. I mean, he's a clean person. But he'll couch surf, he'll do odd jobs, and that's how he gets by. And it works because basically people are nicer than you think, people are friendlier than you think, and your money usually goes a longer way in developing countries than in developed countries. And sometimes you can find weird jobs that pay quite a lot. Apparently he was paid like 15 USD per hour to sit there, literally stand there and tell people, go this way, not this way, there's a hole behind me. That's literally all he did. And apparently he worked there for like 3 days, and that was enough to support him for the next 3 weeks as he traveled. Again, it's an interesting experience, and that brings us to our next book, which is called How to Travel for Free or Pretty Damn near it. And this one got high ratings on Amazon. And one of the things she says in this book is, as far as hitchhiking goes, for females, I wouldn't recommend it. And all the people I know who have hitchhiked, they've done so successfully, but they were almost always male. And a lot of them, although some of them did it alone, some of them also did it in pairs or groups. So it's interesting, and again, it shows the importance of using different sources for knowledge, because this is a female traveler who's a little bit different on the whole idea of hitchhiking. And so that very much, it's interesting. Which brings us to our final book, How to Be the World's Smartest Traveler and Save Time, Money, and Hassle. And with this book, I think this is very interesting because at the very beginning, he does this whole discussion on how, in terms of, checking sources or getting information, especially on stuff like travel, you really want to use multiple sources for a variety of reasons. One, because those travel blogs or those reputable sites like Yelp or TripAdvisor that you think are, completely trustworthy, in reality, because of the politics of it, they're constantly being influenced by corporations or outside sources, sponsorships, and all this stuff. And you get a very biased review or a biased suggestion of where to go, what to buy, and so forth. So I think that's also very important, and it correlates with what she said about hitchhiking. And I mean, what can I say? One thing I really want to talk about, though, is I think one thing that's very important is to understand that travel, you shouldn't use it as a form of escapism, or you really have to come to terms with the fact that you do not need to travel or go to exotic places to be happy in life. And if that's what you need to be happy, and you can't be happy and you're unhappy unless you go travel, then there's a bigger problem at hand. And perhaps you should deal with that first and maybe not figure out, well, you shouldn't worry about travel to begin with. Arguably, if it's like that itch or that wanderlust, that's what they call it, wanderlust, or that, pursue your passion thing, where it's not really deep depression or unhappiness, but just like unease, and I have to do what my heart wants, and this is what I want to do, and I want to make a career out of it or something. That's arguable. I guess you can go travel for that. But I do think it's very important to come to terms with it and not use it as a form of escapism, or I need this to be happy. And I mean, I was reading this book, and it was talking about the history of China in the last 100 years. It's called A Bull in China, and it's written by Jim Rogers, who traveled China extensively and is very big in Chinese business. And the point is, he detailed Chinese history, and up until the last 50 years, most Chinese citizens, out of the 1 billion that exist today, most of them were highly restricted in terms of their capabilities of traveling. Unless you were a high government official, you were not able to travel until the last 50 years, where things have gotten looser. So it's a great illustration about how travel is a privilege. It's a gift. We have this ability to do so that past generations were not able to. So you should be thankful for that and realize that. And although nowadays people are, labeling it as, now you can travel because it's your right as a citizen, for most of a lot of civilizations' lives, most citizens were not able to travel. They were stuck in that town or city, which again, I mean, it speaks to a lot of things. I mean, just think of dating. You could have been a very, very attractive girl who had all this potential, or you could have been a guy who had so many girls that you could have potentially liked, but you were restricted to the girls in your city or town, and if they hated you, or they weren't really ideal for you, well, tough beans, that's all you got. So I just think it's so interesting. And again, there's so much more that I need to read and research up on. And you can tell I've already researched and learned quite a bit, but there's still always more to learn about it. And it's very exciting. And I guess let's go back to one of the books. I think this is probably the most interesting thing, and this same theme and story has been mentioned numerous times by other travel bloggers or uh, travel people on YouTube or with their own websites, whatever you call them, authors. And this is what she said basically at the start of her book. She said, I've traveled all over the world, I've been to all these different places, all this stuff, and each time I return and I talk to my friends and people I work with, they're always envious or jealous, or they're just like, I wish I could do that, but I could never do that. And she says the most ironic part is that most, if not all, of these people are more financially successful than she will ever be, which is kind of ironic. Let me just pull out the quote if I can find it. She said basically that in terms of travel, what's more important than how much money you have is your creativeness. That's not a word. She wrote creativeness. She means creativity. Creativity, time, planning, resourcefulness, and a totally different mindset. These traits are far more valuable attributes in traveling for free, or as close to free as possible. So, again, some of these books have gotten high reviews on Amazon.com and Goodreads, 4 or 5 stars, pretty much all these books. And this one too. For this one specifically, I think it's worth the read. Some of this material you can find online if you do your digging. And I would say, so far, I haven't finished the book, but I've gone through a decent amount of it. And it claims to teach you how to travel for free. And I wouldn't say that's exactly how it goes. And the reason being because she does a lot of things to accommodate traveling for free. So for instance, one of the techniques she uses is home exchange, which pretty much requires you to have a home. Having said that though, I would say it's valuable information for my future, for anyone's future, because once you get a home, apparently this home exchange thing can be very useful. I mean, apparently she's been able to exchange homes and go to some amazing places like Paris, Hawaii, all these things, Manhattan, because people in those locations wanted to visit where she was, Austin, Texas, which was unique to them. And so that gets us to another problem, which I've seen some of, and I don't know how it's playing out now, but that's the problem of saturation. I don't know if it's actually taking place. I've heard it's taking place in some websites, some markets, like Couchsurfing.com. I've experimented with it and looked at it, and from my observations, there's a lot of saturation in certain regions. And if you guys don't know what Couchsurfing is, basically it's this whole idea of being able to share a bedroom or live in someone else's house for free while you're visiting or traveling in a location. And basically, it's generally speaking an exchange of culture. So they're willing to host you because they want to make friends, they want to learn about your experiences and values, and they're not just there to just give you a free place to stay. So again, if you do choose to do something like this, you probably want to provide some value of your own, whether it's your life experiences or whatever. But what I've been seeing in that sort of stuff is this saturation thing where tons of people are flooding in and the demand is too high, and therefore people are getting spammy, and the hosts are not able to accommodate everyone who's trying to get a free room and board all the time, because there's not enough hosts and too many people trying to get free rooms. So that's another thing. I don't know if that's actually true. I think it definitely depends on a region. And so for me, this book so far, it really hasn't I wouldn't say it's told me how to travel for free. It's given me a lot of options for working with it and making my travel a lot cheaper. One of those things would be airfare. Airfare is probably, I mean, no one's going to deny this. From all I've researched, airfare is probably one of the biggest fees that you have to pay. That's a doozy. And she never really addresses how to, get away with it for free. More so, she does a lot of things where you can maybe get it cheaper. She suggests a lot of cheap airlines, and she also suggests a lot of ways of getting free miles, free airline miles. And this requires stuff like frequent flyer miles, which kind of means that you already have to be flying a lot, or you have to start flying. And then she also suggests one of the common things that's constantly suggested, which I still think is good, which is getting credit cards that reward you with miles once you spend a certain amount. Again, it also kind of means that you have to spend a certain amount, but if you're already spending it, might as well get a credit card where you can get rewarded from it. And then she also suggests extending your vacation. This is probably the biggest golden nugget I've gotten from this book. I would say it's very interesting. What she says is basically that it's counterintuitive, but the longer you stay or the longer you vacation or travel for, the less it's going to cost. And the reason being is because accommodations, if you pay by the week or by the month, the cost goes down. Airfare, that's a huge cost up front, and that's a flat fee. So if you're going to fly all the way across the world and only stay for a day versus for a year or half a year or 2 months, that airfare is going to stay the same. So if you can stretch that out for longer, and then maybe if need be, do a few extra trips in the area through cheaper ways of transportation like train or bus, you can save a lot of money and get to a lot more locations. So I just think that's very interesting. And again, I'm still researching and thinking about this. Again, it's all very interesting stuff. At the same time, I'm still trying to reconcile travel with a bunch of other stuff. For instance, in terms of success in life and a lot of stuff I've learned from the most successful people in life, entrepreneurs and so forth, it will take some creativity to reconcile certain things. Like, you want to surround yourself with successful people, people you want to be like, people who are richer than you, smarter than you, where you want to be in life. How can you do that when you travel? Maybe do it virtually, maybe use your travel as a way of doing that. You have to be creative. And there's other stuff too, like, certain access to resources may be cut off if you travel. How can you stay on top of things? Your sleep schedule, your exercise, all these things and other things. It would take some creativity to reconcile those things. But I do think to a certain extent it can be done. There are plenty of people who travel who are, who still exercise. They just go to a gym in the area, who still find a way of getting internet access, who still stay up to date with things, who still manage to find some way to get books to read, whether it's through maybe a public library in a different country that they offer, which I kind of doubt, but there you go. I mean, it requires some creativity. And there's other things that I can't think of off the top of my head, but there are other things that will have to be figured out somehow. And yeah, that's going to be a bit of a doozy, but there you have it. And so that's all we want to say in a nutshell about travel. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in my next video. As always, leave it a like and see if we can get to 100 likes in this video. And I will see you in my next video. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you're not subscribed for my next video, and let me know in the comments what you think about all this. Have you ever considered travel? Are you interested? Are you not? Let me know. Peace.